college football. I'm your host, Grayson Grunhafer, and of course, today's a new week. It was a very fun and exciting weekend. Got to see some high-profile matchups. A lot of them really didn't live up to the hype. Saw quite a few blowouts, but I think today it's really important that we start with the SEC. Obviously, there were two marquee matchups, and for various reasons, they were massive, right? So you had Tennessee going on the road to Georgia, losing 27-13 in a final score that was not as close as the game actually was. Georgia won that game pretty much by 3 scores. They were in control of this game. And honestly, going into it, last week I told you I thought Tennessee was going to cover, but I did think Georgia was going to end up winning this game. I think it's one of those things where I just sat there and went, it's Georgia, right? I trust their defense. I trust them to make enough plays. And I trust them to make Hendon Hooker very uncomfortable. And that's exactly what happened in that one. Now, on the flip side, Alabama LSU, I didn't even talk about that game last week, in large part just because I think it was one of those games that kind of got lost. And the reason it got lost was because of the Tennessee-Georgia game, 1 versus 2. That stole a lot of the headlines. But that wasn't the best game. It was Alabama and LSU, and it was a thriller. Brian Kelly, this game I have to talk about because of Brian Kelly, right? Because of the simple fact that this guy has turned their season around, and he's mentioned, let's play our best football in November, and what a way to start November with a win like this. They're really playing some good football, and they're emerging, right? They're emerging as a team that is getting a lot of college football playoff consideration after this win. They're getting, a lot of national news and publicity, and they're probably going to be ranked, I'd probably say somewhere between 6 and 7 in the CFP. I don't think they can quite get up to 5. It's possible, but I find it really hard to believe that you could put them ahead of Tennessee when Tennessee beat them 40-13. I just don't think you can make that move, at least not yet. And then, of course, the undefeated teams are going to be ahead of them as well when the rankings come out. So curious to see where they end up. But overall, just general thoughts on them. They're playing a good brand of football. And I think in this game in particular, they really showed some things kind of offensively and defensively, but it was more of a grit, right? They didn't come out and do anything that was overwhelming, but it was just methodical and simple. And when you look at a guy like Jaden Daniels, who continues to get better and better, I think that's a credit to the coaching staff. And he played within himself. He only had 182 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, but he also was their leading ball carrier with 95 yards and a touchdown. He ran the ball 18 times. He was unafraid of the moment. And that's huge. That's huge when you play an Alabama team that, of course, everyone has talked about for years for good reason. But I think we're seeing an Alabama team that is at a point right now where if they don't consistently run the ball, they really have trouble scoring a lot of points. And the reason I say that is because when you look at Bryce Young's numbers, you go, okay, 328 yards, a touchdown, an interception. It was a fine game, and it was fine. But he was 25 of 51, and in my eyes, when I see that from a quarterback like Bryce Young, who is accurate, can flat out play in the biggest games, it tells me that their talent at wide receiver, at tight end, is just not really there compared to what it has been. Last year, you had John Mechie, and he was a great player. You had Jameson Williams. These are guys that are hard to replace, and they just, I don't feel like have quite replaced those guys yet. And so in the run game, they really need Jahmyr Gibbs to steal the show. And he was 15 carries for 99 yards. He was fine. But he wasn't great. And when he's not great, I feel like this offense sometimes can struggle. On the LSU side, you won the turnover battle 1-0. You won the penalty battle, which has been a reoccurring theme for Alabama. They continue to lose the penalty battle. To LSU, more disciplined on the day. LSU on third downs, 5 of 12. Alabama, 6 of 16. So while LSU got outgained by 100 yards, it did not matter. And then, of course, you get to overtime, and Brian Kelly made the call, right? Alabama scored a touchdown on their drive in overtime, and LSU decided, hey, if we score a touchdown, we're going to go for 2. That's exactly what they did. And that's the kind of guts that it takes to beat Alabama, especially in year 1 as a head coach. So impressed by them, and now they have the inside track to get to the SEC championship game. This LSU team has at Arkansas, UAB, and then at Texas A&M. I'm not going to sit here and say that those games are foregone conclusions. I absolutely think LSU could lose to an Arkansas or to an A&M. It's very possible, but with the way they're playing right now, I just think it'd probably be foolish of me to think that they're going to lose one of those three. Either way, even if they do, they still are the odds-on favorite to make it back to the SEC championship. They already hold tie breaks over Ole Miss and Alabama. And those two teams still have to play each other. So LSU sitting in a great spot in year one with Brian Kelly. Very impressed by them and their resiliency to get this win. Now on the Alabama side, I hear a lot of people, a lot of chatter, right? Nick Saban's done. Nick Saban it's over. I've heard some people say he might retire after this year. Guys, I mean, it's one bad year, right? It's one bad year, and it's a team that I don't think is constructed with his DNA quite in mind. Like, they're not great defensively. They're just good. They have a very good quarterback, but again, the weapons aren't what they normally are. I just think it's one down year, and Bama's still looking at their schedule. They have at Ole Miss, Austin Peay, and Auburn. They still have a great chance to get to 10-2. At worst, they'll be 9-3, and they'll go to a bowl game and probably win that bowl game by 40. That's just what it is. That's what Alabama is, and that's fine. It's a down year, no doubt, to their standard, but hey, it's still a good year. I wouldn't write them off quite yet. Now, as far as the other game, I mentioned Tennessee and Georgia. So Tennessee is now going to drop probably to 5 or 6 in the CFP rankings. I think it's going to be hard for them to get into the CFP now. Missouri, at South Carolina, at Vanderbilt, they should win all three of those fairly easily. So you're talking about an 11-1 team. And typically, if you're 11-1 in the SEC, you have a great shot to make it. My issue is we're seeing here in Bama might go 9-3 or 10-2. They're just not, they're not going 11-1, which is what you kind of wanted to happen. Makes that win look even better. And then the Georgia game, you kind of got blown out. And according to the College Football Playoff Committee, they're going to watch the games, right? They're going to watch the game and see how it unfolded. I can't imagine they sit there and watch that game and go, okay, yeah, we want to see Georgia and Tennessee rematch. I just don't think that's going to happen. Now, on the flip side of that, chaos can happen. I think, these other teams, I think if Oregon goes 12-1, if TCU goes 12-1 and win their conference, they're getting in over Tennessee. But, if you get 12-1 Clemson versus 11-1 Tennessee, I think there's a much greater argument, especially since Clemson got blown out in their loss and the ACC is so down. So don't give up on the Vols yet. They're still kind of there, but they need chaos to happen for them to make the college football playoff. Now, Georgia. This is going to be quick, short, simple. That right now is the best team in the country. They deserve to be number one. They should get every single vote. The CFP should have them at 1. I know in some of their games this year, they haven't looked as impressive as last year's team, but I think you're holding this team to a standard that is very hard to match. Last year's team had a generational type defense. I mean, one of the best defenses we've ever seen. And so the standard is, okay, they have to be as good as that team. They're not as good as that team, but it doesn't matter because right now they're the best team in the country. What they did to Tennessee is exactly what they can do to, in my opinion, every team that is currently in the playoff picture. I mean, look at how those teams are built. I mean, Ohio State does very similar things to Tennessee, except they can't run the ball as well as Tennessee. I mean, how's that matchup going to look? Are they going to be able to block Georgia? Probably not. Are they going to turn the ball over? Are they going to have problems, running the football? Absolutely. It's going to take C.J. Stroud throwing for 400 yards for Ohio State to beat Georgia. I mean, it's just being realistic of currently how I see things right now, and I think Ohio State's a team that everyone's excited about. Michigan would be interesting because you're basically doing, okay, can Michigan do what Georgia does better in a one-game setting? Maybe. I trust Stetson Bennett more than I do J.J. McCarthy. I think that Michigan's defense is good, but I don't think they're going to be as challenged as Georgia when they get there. And we'll see if they can get by Ohio State. That's a totally different question. If TCU or Oregon make it, it's the same exact problem. I just don't think they're physical enough up front to deal with Georgia. And I think Georgia can completely take them out of their game plan. Those are my issues, and that's where I'm at with Georgia currently. There's a lot of season left. We still have all of November to go through. But right now, Georgia is the best team in the entire country. So thanks for listening today. That's it for Crystal Ball College Football. Of course, later in the week, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other games that were headliners, as well as my best bets at the end of the week. But thanks for listening. This has been Crystal Ball College Football.